real life friends are like, what are you doing? Talking about emails? That's fun. More people came up to me and said, I love your podcast or I love your YouTube channel than they did the newsletter. It's so cool to talk to other people who like write content and like spend 30 hours researching something and then put it into like a long form article.
You need good content to stay alive. I think that's just what it comes down to.
Huge newsletters are consistently saying this, but nobody wants to listen. So. All right, welcome back to the Growth in Reverse podcast. I'm Chenell.
And I'm Dylan.
And today we're going to talk about some takeaways and things that we've seen on the back end of the first annual newsletter marketing summit that happened in Austin, Texas. I got back over the weekend and I thought it would be fun if we just sat down and kind of talked through what happened there, what I learned, some trends I'm seeing, and what we've kind of taken away from it.
Yeah, I'm excited because I wasn't there. And so I saw all the pictures and people on stage, including you. Very jealous that I couldn't make it, but it looked like a great time, looked like a really successful event. So, hat tip to Matt McGarry and his team putting that on. And yeah, I'm just going to be really curious to kind of get firsthand feedback from somebody who not only was there as yourself, but somebody who also was like speaking there, which you were. And I also saw a lot of people summarizing your talk and saying how great it was. So we might have to touch on that a little bit too.
Okay. Well, that'll be on your end because I'm not going to talk about myself. So
I know you won't. So I will prompt it. Don't worry.
All right. Awesome. So I guess the first thing that I took away from this, just as like a personal anecdote, was that I think podcasts and YouTube are like the trust builders. Like more people came up to me and said, I love your podcast or I love your YouTube channel than they did the newsletter, which as a writer, I was like, oh. But like, I get it because we get to kind of like be in your ears, like while we're talking through all of these things. So it's just, I don't know, it's just so fascinating. And I'm just couldn't be happier that we started this and are continuing to keep it going. So
I love that feedback. That's really, really interesting feedback as well, that people would say that over the newsletter too, which you've been publishing for over 2 years now.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's like because it's a newer thing, a newer channel and people are so excited about it or what, but I think it's probably a mix of both things.
I think it just puts a voice and a face to writing that you're reading, right? So you're going to be more inclined to approach somebody you've probably seen and heard because you know their vibe and you kind of know what to expect to some degree from their personality, unless they're totally faking it on camera and they're complete assholes in real life. But you kind of have a vibe in what to expect, as opposed to a writer who you're like, you've seen like their byline photo and you've written their or read their newsletter maybe, and then you're kind of like, I don't know how to approach this person, what they're like, what vibe they're going to give off. So I could see that being something where it's going to build a little bit more affinity with people.
I think that's very true. People missed you, Dylan. They were like, where's Dylan? Is Dylan here? It's like, no.
Next time. Next time.
We got to get him to venture out of Canada.
Canada, yes. I will try. Dig out of my igloo here.
Yeah. Seriously. So funny. Yeah. I think the other thing that I saw a lot of, well, first, I just can't stop thinking. I meant to go to a couple of sessions and I missed a few, but I was sitting there talking to someone I've been, going back and forth with since I started the newsletter, Justin Gordon. He writes Just Go Grind. He is also relaunching his podcast here soon, but he writes deep dives into startup founders. And I was like, it's so cool to talk to other people who like write content and like spend 30 hours researching something and then put it into like a long form article. And then we were standing there talking and up walks this guy named Jermaine, who neither of us had ever met before. And he also wrote deep dives. And I was like, yes, this is so cool. I just looked at his website. He's actually written 1,825 consecutive posts on biographies and entrepreneurship. Really interesting.
1825, like days or weeks or?
I don't know. That's a good question.
That's quite the streak.
Yeah, you can click on like posts and it shows like every month. Wow, this is wild.
Go Jermaine.
Yeah, seriously. But that was so fun just to like have 3 people who write deep dives talking about this workflow and like our research processes and like what we do every week, essentially. I thought that was a fun little conversation that I was a part of. Really enjoyed that.
I love it. Your note sums it up here in our show notes our internal notes, where people who write deep dives are cool. I think that's just like nice. Very, very well put. Yeah. And I think it also goes to say that we've talked a little bit, we've touched on exclusives, and we're probably going to do a whole episode on exclusives, and deep dives are like a version of that. And I think my hunch is, if forward thinking, people who are doing these more exclusive content, deep research, and are able to actually write well as well, is that's kind of a key component too. I think that's just going to be more and more valuable for the future in terms of getting attention, getting subscribers, and having content that people are going to be willing to share. So I think those people who are writing deep dives are kind of onto something.
I think so too. And you just learn better about what the person has done and like how they
Hmm.
actually grew or did whatever thing you're writing about.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. So I guess, does this lead us into content is king? This is like one of the main themes that I heard and talked about myself.
Yeah, either we could start with you sharing why content is king, and your cool acronym that you've come up with for content, valuable content.
Yeah.
So why don't we start there, and then you can lead us into other reasons why you've come to that.
Yeah. So I was creating my deck, I guess you will call it, for my talk at
Hmm.
Newsletter Marketing Summit. And I was like, oh, I could share so many cool growth stories and like ideas. But every time I do that, I feel like it doesn't work as well. And the reason is like the underarching theme is that like if your content isn't good, like none of these growth quote unquote hacks are going to work. I was just sharing how like insanely valuable content, which is like IV content.
IV
I don't know if
content.
I love this acronym moving forward, but here we are.
I think I
Um,
do. You need an IV if you're sick and in the hospital. You need hook up to the IV,
yeah,
and
it's
it's just
true.
like it's medicinal. You need good content to stay alive. I think that's just what it comes down to.
And um it was interesting. I got a lot of good feedback on it. I think I probably disappointed some people who were looking for like the cool growth hacked, like the cool growth hacks and stuff. But
Right.
I also got a lot of people telling me afterwards, like it's such a good reminder to like go back and rework your content if you're not getting replies or people sharing your content without you asking them to make sure it's actually decent. And so hopefully I'm going to see if Matt will let me share the talk on the podcast feed in the future, just so we have
Yeah.
people can hear it for themselves, even if they weren't there. But yeah, I just think it's the overarching thing. Like every time someone says like my newsletter's not growing fast enough or I'm not getting enough subscribers, and I look at their content, I'm like, I'm sorry, it's not good enough. Like no, like people aren't going to share it. It's just,
It's
it's a
not IV
hard
content.
truth. Yeah, it's a hard thing to hear, but I think it's
Mhm.
a helpful guiding point.
Yeah, I think the content, you have to spend a lot more time creating really good content than you kind of do almost anything else. And that's hard too, right? Because you need to also like promote your content and revenue streams going and find collaborators and write on social media. You've got to do all these things. But if the content isn't good and falls flat, then none of that really matters.
And that doesn't mean that your content has to be long form, like these super in-depth pieces.
Mhm.
Like spending time on content can also be refining it and making it shorter and more helpful for people. So I don't
Yeah.
want people to take away from this that like it has to be long form content. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just
Yeah.
think it needs to be valuable. And when you spend more time on it, refining it, making it more valuable, it ends up that way. So,
Good clarification.
and I mean, one of the coolest things, like I was able to chat with Alex Lieberman back in like the speaker green room, which is like so fun. Like just
And for those
Alex,
not in the know, Alex Lieberman is
yeah, founder of Morning Brew, co-founder of Morning
right.
Brew.
Yeah.
So he has a little bit of experience in the space. And
Just a little.
so he was, I was telling him like what I was talking about, and he's like, yeah, I mean it's totally, that's exactly the thing. Like if your content stinks, like nobody's going to share it. And he said people
Mhm.
always talk about the referral program and how well it worked, and it's always used as an example of like a great referral program. And he's like, it kind of annoys me because people kind of leave off the fact that people use a referral program to share your content. And if your content's not good, they're not going to share it just to get a sticker. Like they want a
No.
sticker of a brand or a newsletter that they love because the content's good. He's like, so that
Yeah.
was the underarching reason it took off. Thank you. Yes, correct.
That's
uh,
great. That's a good reminder.
so good. And it's like coming from somebody who essentially started one of the biggest newsletters in the space. And like a
Mhm.
lot of people these days are trying to be the next Morning Brew for X or whatever, but they forget
Yeah.
that that is like the underarching theme. The other one that was really
Yeah.
cool, Yossi Levi, who I wrote a deep dive on, the car dealership
Mhm.
guy. He has a fascinating business, but I kind of shared one of his pieces of content in the talk, and he was in the audience, which was cool. And so later, when he was on a panel, they asked him like how he grew, and he was like, "Well, Chenell said it earlier, like you have to have good content." And I was like, "This is
Yeah.
so cool! Like, thank you for closing the circle on this because
Validating.
it's just like these huge newsletters are consistently
Mhm.
saying this, but nobody wants to listen. So
Yeah, so important. Did you know he was in the audience when you were giving your talk?
I did not.
Mm,
I did not. So that was really cool. And I just like happened to walk into their panel at like right before he said that. And I was like, okay, this is awesome.
it's good timing. It's good
Yeah,
timing.
it was good timing.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, even in that talk, I was like, AI is kind of removing a lot of newsletters, like curated newsletters aren't going to be as valuable because AI can
Mhm.
create some of those. So there's just more and more competition than ever. Find
Yeah.
your angle, find your competitive advantage, keep creating content around that thing.
Absolutely. And I think, I don't know if we'll get into this right now or if we could wait on this, but Adam Ryan from Work Week, he
Hmm.
just put out, I think yesterday, a really in depth thought experiment, I suppose, and his prediction on how AI is going to impact newsletters. A link to that as well, maybe in the show notes. But really interesting how basically the whole, to paraphrase the whole thing, it's like AI is going to sort what you see even in your inbox. So you better make sure that your newsletter that's going to inboxes is really high quality so that people are opening it and AI sees that signal and they keep showing it in the inbox.
100%. That was such a good
Yeah,
piece by him. I know
it
there's
was.
some areas of it that people are like, well, maybe not quite, but I think the
Sure.
overarching underlying theme is like, yeah, he's totally right.
And I think you got to be bold when you make stuff like this, and not everyone's going to agree with you anyway. So I just appreciate the boldness of kind of taking a position and a stance on anything, even if I don't fully agree with it, or even if I do. So I think we could use a little bit more of that probably in the newsletter space, because we are a little bit of a kumbaya kind of, everybody gets along and I love your newsletter, it's great, everything's
Yeah,
great, but a little bit of spiciness doesn't hurt, I think.
not at all. Okay, I think the next one, let's get into something more fun because people are going to be like,
Yeah.
oh, really? Content? That's what you're talking about right now? Uh, so Steph Smith she's just incredible, like an incredible speaker and thinker and just creator. She had a whole
Hmm.
talk about some of the best tools out there that you can find, like different trending topics or ways to use data online to help create content. So some of the ones that she called out were Gummy Search, which is essentially a tool that you can use. And I've heard her talk about this before, but I never actually looked
Hmm.
into it. It's a tool you can use to like find trending topics on Reddit. And it's not just like, hey, this one got the most upvotes. It's like, hey, this topic in general on Reddit, like posts about this topic are getting more reach, or here's what people are upvoting and talking most about. So I thought that was really interesting.
Kind of like a Ahrefs for just subreddits kind of thing, or in topics in subreddit or in Reddit.
Kind of. It's actually way more interactive too. You can actually like go
Oh,
in there and see all of the posts and that kind of thing from Gummy Search too. So you don't even have to go to
oh,
Reddit,
cool.
which is fun.
Hmm.
It was like 29
Very
bucks a
cool.
month. I might test it out in a little bit, but I was using the free side of things, which you could still get quite a bit of data out of. So I thought that was fun.
Nice. I'll be
Yeah.
checking it out. I've been spending a little bit more time in the Reddit, the newsletters subreddit lately. So it's been
Nice.
an interesting experiment. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she was talking about this tool called App Magic, which I did not know existed. You can see like what apps are like earning the most money every month, etc. Pretty insane. Um,
What?
yeah. And so she showed this
Huh.
like screenshot here. I can share the slides with you in here just so you can see it. She shared this screenshot of essentially the App Store, and you can see how much money each app is making. And like my favorite, I'm like such a nerd. I have a plant app, so you can like take a picture of a plant or an insect, and it'll be like, "Hey, this is a blah 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 bug, and
Yeah.
it's gonna hurt your tomato plant or whatever."
Yeah.
But yeah, so the app is called Picture This, I think, and it's earning like $2 million a month.
A month?
A month.
A month.
A month. And like, okay, even if this isn't perfectly accurate, it's like pretty good in terms of like comparing to other apps. And it was like one of the top grossing apps. And I was like, this makes so much sense because like
Wait, what's it
people
called?
picture this.
Picture this.
So I'll find like a
That's
weed in my
impressive.
backyard and I'm like, what is this thing? Because I don't want it to like hurt the garden or whatever.
I thought you were talking about like houseplants. So I was like going to be
Oh, you
100%
can
down to
use
check it
that.
out.
It's the
But
same thing.
oh,
It
can you?
works on
Oh,
houseplants
okay,
too.
sweet.
And you can set it up.
Nice.
All right, before I rant too much about this, but you can set and say like, okay, I own this plant, and it'll help you if you pay for the app, which is how they get you.
Yeah,
It'll let
of
you set
course.
up like a schedule, so it'll remind you via push notification, like, hey, it's Tuesday, you should water your blank plant,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty
Mm-hmm.
fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is, it's funny because this is totally editable content for our lovely editor, but I had an app like this, and I think I was killing my plants because it doesn't know how much humidity's in your room and
Right.
how big your pot is and how much sunlight it's getting exactly. It's all like just speculation. So I was like putting little dribbles of water in my plants like on a almost by every other day kind of basis. And I don't think they liked it very much. So I just kind of trashed the app and now I've
Uh,
got my own spreadsheet full of my plant watering tracking. So
Dylan, I
you
love that
know,
we're both like plant nerds. I can't keep indoor plants
yeah.
alive, but I can garden. But
That's
yeah,
amazing. That's amazing. I can't
different kind of
grow. I
plants.
grew like 3 total tomatoes from 3 plants, I think, last summer. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I could use your green thumb in the garden for sure. We just need to
uh,
swap skills.
yes, we do.
Yeah.
Cross promo our
Anyway,
skills.
back to newsletters.
Back to newsletters. But yeah, so there are, I'm sure she has this talk somewhere else. I'll see if I can
Hmm.
like link to some of these tools, but it's just another way to add an extra piece of research to your content. Talking about exclusives, like you want to add some original research, here you go. This is exactly how
Yeah.
you can do it. So
Yeah.
she shows you like where to find data sets and like things that just other people don't include in their content. And that's going to make your content stand out for sure.
Well, yeah, and Steph was the kind of the main lead when it came to running trends in the beginning, right? When the Hustle
Yep.
started up their paid subscription of trends, the whole point of that was like doing this kind of deep research into what was trending in terms of topics on Google, in keywords research and all that sort of stuff, and like exposing those for their paid subscribers, right? For like business trends and ideas. So
100%.
she of many people or of all the people you should listen to, she's going to be somebody who knows how this stuff works and what you should look for.
Definitely. So that was a really cool talk. I actually only got to listen to half of it because then I had to go get ready for mine, which I was bummed
Oh,
about,
right.
but I'm excited
Oh,
to watch the replay when it comes out.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think you can buy the replays for all of these talks too, if I'm not mistaken. I
Interesting.
know
Okay. Yeah.
it's not cheap, but Matt was selling, I think I think right before the weekend was over, he was selling them for $200. So you could watch every single talk for about $200. I don't know if that's still up or what that price is at now, but just maybe we could include a link to that in the show notes if anybody's interested in checking out and paying for those talks.
I'll before this goes live, I'll message Matt and see if he can get us a discount too.
Ooh, I like it. Okay.
Ooh. Okay. So TBD and check the show notes if
TBD.
there's a discount.
Yeah. There may or may not be.
If not, I totally get it. I didn't think it
Yeah.
was too expensive for him, but yeah. So the next thing I want to talk about, I am just so freaking bullish on community after this conference. So we had, just to give you context, I think there's 80 members in our Growth and Reverse Pro group, and there were
Nice.
like 10 to 12 that were at the conference. So like
That's sweet.
a good chunk of them were there, and it was just so fun getting to know these people in real life. Yeah, I mean, like the one day I was sitting at lunch and I look over across the room and there's like 5 of them sitting together, and I was like, I know none of these people knew each other before the community
Right.
started, and I thought that was
Yep.
like it was so heartwarming. I was like, yes, this is so fun. Like bringing these people together in real life was just awesome.
Yeah, that's so great. I see you being just like this puppeteer almost of like all these people, not like in a negative way at all, but you're just like, I'm bringing my sheep together to flock.
Yes.
Like it's like
It's just
it's really cool that I don't know that you created this thing and now people are like connecting because of it.
It's so fun. We had a meetup the day before the conference started. We
Mhm.
did a collab meetup with Clouse's community,
Yeah, right,
the
right.
lab. And for me, like, think about this in the moment, but it was so full circle because I started in Jay's community. And so, like,
Mhm.
having a collaborative meetup with his community and my community also, like, it was just coming full circle from like where I started this whole growth and reverse thing at.
It's like this meta meetup.
It is, yes. But that was super fun. So
That's
then
awesome.
people got to meet before the conference started and like not have like
Yeah.
the introvert thing of not knowing anybody there, which is what I try to
Yep.
avoid at conferences. So
It's like, hey, I recognize your profile picture, but
yes.
too nervous or awkward to come say hi or too shy.
So that was
Yeah.
fun. I will definitely try and do more of those in the future at conferences because I think it just helps people like get to know each other beforehand. The community in general is just so fun to talk about. Like yesterday we were on a call for an hour just nerding out about sponsorships. Like that's fun.
Mhm. It was. And
That
there's
was-
some really interesting insights people were sharing about like what they were thinking of doing, some ideas they had and what would work and what wouldn't work for them. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was really fun.
And
And it
so
was super casual too.
It was. Bringing it back to Adam Ryan's piece, like he was even saying, like what's so important now is like take your newsletter and start building a community off of the back end of it. Like that is the future of this stuff. And while I don't think that's like imminent, like right now, I'm sure in the next few years, like newsletters are going to be harder and harder to like reach the same number of people, just with like
Yeah.
Google spam and like all of the stuff happening. But having a community of people is a good way to go in terms of,
Yeah.
bringing them together.
Oh, you can't really lose on that. Yes, it's a time commitment for sure. Like Adam, he wrote his heading for this section is the only way to win. Of course, winning at the newsletter game. One, create content that can't be summarized, which is quite a bold statement, hard to do, but very powerful if you can. Own the relationship beyond an email address. So that's what you're talking about here, right?
Mm-hmm.
He mentions like SMS lists and community spaces and direct relationships. So community spaces being whether online or offline or both, which is kind of what you started to create now that these people are meeting in real life. And his third one is don't be a commodity. And that falls in line to me with the IV content, right? Create content that's not commoditized, that only you can create, or that takes a lot of work to recreate. I think those are really great points on that.
So I am more bullish than ever on community as well. I need to stop using that word. I don't know why I said it twice now in our chat, but
What, bullish?
Yeah.
Hey, when you're bullish on something, just go all in.
Yeah. I'm so excited about it. Like just beaming with ideas. And then there was a panel with Steph Smith and Sam Parr talking about how they grew Trends, like the Trends community in the early days. And like Trends was supposed to just be a content play. And then like the night before they launched, Sam was like, I'm going to launch a Facebook group. And he just like created it randomly, like on a whim. And like that was the most popular part of the Trends community was the Facebook group.
Of course it was, because it was not planned out, not strategic at all, just like a hunch, a gut feeling. And he did it. Isn't that the way it goes, eh?
100%.
My Canadian is showing, I'm sorry.
Your Canadian is showing. You're beaming with pride over there for Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but he was talking about like how he grew it in the early days. And I just thought it was so fun. He was saying that he would, seed content. Like he would write pieces of content and have members actually post it. So he would write the whole post, send it to a member in a DM and be like, hey, can you like post this? Because it was like either about their business or like something he saw them do online elsewhere. And he just wanted it to look like a happening party. And I thought that was really funny, but it obviously worked.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They did so much stuff, so much wild stuff. And I think we have a deep dive on Sam Parr coming out in the next little bit. It might be out by the time this episode airs.
So that was really fun. I need to go back to that replay as well because that was amazing. But yeah, I think
what else we got?
The other thing, I think the last thing, maybe people are just sick of social media, like using social to grow their newsletter. It's just like, oh my gosh. I heard so many people like, I just can't with X platform, or I guess is X, but Twitter.
I was going to say, what do you mean exactly?
With Twitter or LinkedIn or any of them. It's just like, you get it, you figure it out, and then everything changes. And you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to spend more time figuring this out? And it's just like this hamster wheel. So yeah, it just feels disingenuous because you're playing the game of like, how can I make sure that the algorithm likes me today, but also making it something that people want to connect with me later about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do I just write what's on my mind and also get seen by people and not sound like everybody else on the platform? And it's a pain. It's a pain. I'm not surprised to hear that either because it's like, you think you've got the algorithm figured out, so to speak. And then all of a sudden the next month your impressions are down, your engagement's down. You're just like, kind of got to throw your hands up in the air and be like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. It's frustrating for sure. So I was talking to people and I was like, would it be helpful if I like created a guide on like how to grow without social, like a course kind of thing? And people were like, abso-freaking-lutely. So I think I'm going to move on this one. How to better do cross promos and swaps and collaborations and like what templates you can use and case studies and that kind of thing. So So if you're interested in this, email me, Chenell@growthinreverse.com and just let me know.
Yeah.
I'll add you to the little behind the scenes list, if you will.
Yeah. Like, what do you want to know? What do you want to learn about?
Yeah.
Also is helpful because sometimes we wonder what, or we think we know what people want to learn about and we don't actually.
Yeah. So
Because there's a lot of different ways it could go.
For sure. But
Yeah.
the few conversations I had at the conference, it sounded like a good move. So I'm happy to
Mhm.
share what's worked for me and others I've seen doing it in the past. So I'm excited
Yeah.
about
Well, you've
that.
got a little bit of a catalog to pull from,
Yes.
examples of people who've done something along these lines.
Yes. Just a minor
Yeah,
catalog.
that helps.
Yeah. Well, so what did you see in some of the recaps that you read that you thought were interesting? Do you want to share some
Yeah,
of
there were
those?
some good ones. Yeah, we I don't think we've talked at all about Jay Clouse. And he was, I think, if correct if I'm wrong, but I think he was the very first talk from the whole conference.
He was the very first talk. Yep.
And or guest speaker. Yeah. So his talk, the way I'm going to sum it up sounds very simplistic, but it's like very also, I think a lot of people need to hear it. And the big takeaway, Brad Wolverton wrote about this. I think Nathan May wrote about it as well in his recap. Spend your time on things people remember was kind of Brad's main lesson, but he pulled out Jay by saying, pick your spots. So choose one discovery platform. And he references like social media essentially as a discovery platform, even though we just railed about growing without social. But if you are going to do social, just choose one. And for example, LinkedIn, and then choose one relationship platform. So your newsletter, where you can be world class. And I thought that line really stood out to me is like where you can be world class. Where can you position your best self, or where can you really leverage your talents and skills? Maybe it's writing, maybe it's not. And you got to figure that out. But pick one of each and go hard at those and grow on those, and don't try to do everything and be everywhere, I think is kind of the main takeaway.
Yeah, it goes back to in so many deep dives I've written. I say this so many times. People grow to X number of followers and then they go to a second platform. So like figure out one. Like don't try to
Mm-hmm.
be everywhere. And so when Jay said this, I was like, thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go to one
It,
platform, figure it out, learn what people want to hear from you about, and then you can move
mm-hmm.
on once you've mastered that.
And I think we've railed on this in past episodes too. It bears repeating. Like
Yes.
it's worth hearing again. And the other thing he said, bullet point was build on own land. So prioritize trust over attention, right? So building owned relationships, like in a newsletter, instead of trying to be discovered on social media. So essentially, like he goes on to kind of a sort of a bonus lesson here, and that is really like write high quality, longer form content or create longer form assets, as opposed to just always prioritizing like quick social posts or maybe short videos. That stuff can go viral and can get a lot of eyeballs and attention. But that being said, if you don't have anything long form to really build that relationship with people, they're just gonna like your stuff and move on, and you're not really gonna create that connection that you need to create a newsletter subscriber, a follower, and eventually maybe a customer. So I thought those were some great bullet points.
Yeah, he had a great talk. Always enjoyed Jay's takes on everything in the creator space.
Yeah, yeah. Jay's he's been doing this for a while. He knows, and he's been very successful at it. So anything he says, I definitely don't take with a grain of salt. I listen closely. One other thing that came up in a few of the recaps I read were about Nathan Barry's speech talk about flywheels as business drivers. Brad pulled out a example about leaning on your audience to basically produce content for your newsletter, and he suggested doing this by asking every newsletter or new newsletter subscriber to tell you about their biggest pain point, and then you can turn that into content that you write about. So it's not always easy getting people to reply to your welcome email, especially, but if you can position it in the right way, you might not get 10 out of 10 replies, but even if you get 3 out of 10 replies, you've got 3 pain points. Whether they're all the same or they're all different, that gives you something that you can focus on when it comes to writing your next newsletter or creating a product, even potentially, to solve these problems that you may not have otherwise known. So I thought that was an interesting point. And of course, the more people, it works as a flywheel, because the more people that subscribe to your newsletter, the more intel you're going to get, the more content you can create to attract even more people. So it's just kind of this thing that spins and just keeps on spinning faster and working better.
I thought one of the other things Nathan said in his talk that I thought was just a small takeaway, but it was so interesting. If you're trying to grow on a certain social platform, like ask your newsletter subscribers who they follow on that platform, because then you can like either collaborate with them or start posting on their content, like commenting on their content, sharing their stuff. So I thought that was interesting to like, oh, that's like another research point of like, where are my people hanging out and who are they following? I thought that was interesting. Like it's such a small, I think he said it as like a throwaway comment. And I was like, oh, no, that's really smart.
Yeah, I think that is smart. I could see that being a challenge getting the responses, but if you could just even frame it as like reply with like just one other person you follow, and
Yeah.
enjoy their content on social media or something like that. Because if you say, who do you follow, or name a list of people, as soon as you have to make people think a little bit harder, they're just going to do it. So, but I like that. That is smart. It's
Yeah.
very smart. There was a few others. I think, let me just pull up Nathan's list here. Yes, this is what I want to talk about. The assist. So the heading for this section from Nathan May was negative CAC is the new black. CAC stands for customer acquisition cost. And basically what he's saying is the assist are spending $50,000 a month on ads to acquire customers, and yet they're recouping that all up front. And so I had to check it out. So I went to the assist, and I'm not the demographic. It's a women in business focused newsletter. But I need to figure out what they were doing. So I subscribed, and as soon as you subscribe, you fill out a quick 5-question survey. So they get some demographic data, and they also know what position you are at a company or what you do, what industry you're in. And then after you fill out that survey, they take you to the next screen where it's this long page of here's what we think would be the best, tech stack tools for you for what you do. Here's a great resource or article that you should check out. And they just have this list of all these things. And so my assumption is these are almost all affiliate links or their own products. And so they're going to recoup some money because, yeah, not everybody's going to click on these things and purchase, but there's bound to be some people that will. And so my assumption is when Nathan says they're recouping all of it up front, they probably are. Did you see this talk when you were at Austin?
Didn't. It was
You
directly
didn't?
after
Okay.
mine. And so I was like not out there. Yeah.
Got it.
I know.
You're in the green room just rubbing elbows with all the
No,
hoity-toity people.
I was like coming down from my like panic attack. Just kidding. No, so yeah, I walked backstage and then called Anna, and then I went and saw the Steph Smith Sampar panel. So unfortunately, they were at the exact same moment.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. And I missed a point here as well. They're not just affiliate deals. They're actually like partners. Like it looks like they have sponsorships from certain people like Monday.com, Notion, and other B2B companies. So not only would they probably have some affiliate arrangements with some smaller of partners, or maybe even not, they would just have straight up partnership deals. Like, we know X amount of people are going to be driven to the site. They're going to see your product and they'll get some conversion data from that. And then that just makes it that much easier to pitch the next one, right? So I thought this was really smart. If you can figure out all the back end to do it, and you have the money to spend on ads, like $50,000 a month is not anything to sneeze at. But yeah, I thought this was pretty cool.
I think Tori Dunlap does this too. I remember this from a deep dive. On the back end, she would, because you fill out a quiz, and then based on that, you go to a different page.
Smart.
Yeah.
That's smart.
So that was a good one. Yeah.
Go
so
ahead.
Alex Lieberman, he kind of shared, I think it was like the Morning Brew in 36 pictures or something. So it was just 36 slides.
Yes.
And he just walked through his backstory and like how it got started. And he was sharing some screenshots of like emails he wrote and like how he found Austin Reef, who was his co-founder.
Right.
And so it was just, that one was just a really interesting business take on like someone who built like this huge multi-million-dollar newsletter of like how it happened. And he did share this,
it's like behind the scenes kind of thing, right?
Yeah. And he shared this really interesting like Google Doc, here are the marketing things we could try. And like then next to each idea was like a column for the effort this would take, the potential results, and like then they would figure out like based on those numbers, like which one to actually pursue. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah, because I have so many ideas and I never know how to categorize them. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I heard Nathan Barry talk about this on a different podcast that he was doing. And I was like, yep, I need to start doing something like this. So
basically creating almost like a scorecard of like,
exactly,
is this worth it?
Yeah. So like effort, return, and like that kind of thing. So if you can just like come up with, it's not a perfect way to do it, but I think it's better than my random, oh, I'm going to do this today idea.
Yeah. There's a little bit more thought through and some numbers around it, even if they're very speculative. But yeah, that's smart. I think one thing that stood out to me as well is how he made the referral program. Once you were one of their larger referrals, he like hand wrote mail to you and sent you like on a lined piece of paper, like, hey, thanks for recommending Morning Brew, and keep up the amazing work. And he's got some other words there, but like I just thought that was really a really nice touch, and that's just going to make a big fan an even bigger fan.
Definitely. Yeah. The way they built that business is just so scrappy. He kept talking about like being in the mud, and I love that phrase. It's just like, yeah,
Mm,
you're in the mud. I get it.
mhm.
Like,
And then the last point on him was that I thought was interesting was be patient. So that's this is what Brad was saying when he was doing his recap. Essentially, like testing new, and this actually ties in really nicely with our episode with Anne Laura and like testing things and experimenting, seeing what the results are, and then if something is showing to be working, like expand with it. But don't just like commit to a direction just on a hunch that you think it's the right way to go, and then after 3 months find out you've sunk a whole bunch of money and time and effort into it, and it's just failing miserably. So one of his examples was Dan Toomey, who I don't know if you've watched his good work
yeah,
videos. They're so good.
so funny.
And when I first started watching that, I had no idea that's where it started. He just does such a good job. And it would just started as like, it's almost kind of like a spin-off from like the Daily Show, or how these people have their own little bits or segments and they turn them all into their own shows. So I really like that approach. I thought it was cool.
It was a good conference. I'm excited for next year. I'm actually really excited in May 2nd, I think it is.
Yes.
Yeah, Friday, May 2nd in New York. They're doing
Mhm.
the newsletter conference, which will be the second year of that one. I had a blast at that one last year. It was so fun to see different people and like
You were on a panel last
I
year
was
on
on a
that one, right?
panel. Yeah.
Yeah.
TBD on what I'm doing this year. I will be on stage at some point. We have to figure out what that looks like, but that'll be fun to just kind of relive the newsletter marketing summit, but in a different state that's much closer to my home.
Yeah, you could almost drive.
Yeah. And I remember last year that conference was cool because there were people from like Bloomberg and like these big names. And me just saying that, people probably cringe of like, ugh, Bloomberg. But like the things you can learn from someone who's running like 60 newsletters at a time is wild. It's not as flashy as like the creators that might have been on stage before at this past one, but it is very informative.
Yeah, there's fewer maybe personal brands, but way more brands.
Correct. Yeah. But I think they're starting to incorporate more creators too. I know like Jaspreet Singh of
Market Briefs.
Yeah, he runs Market Briefs, but he has a Minority Mindset, his YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty crazy, that growth story there too. But I know he'll be there. So I'm excited. I'm excited for that one. I just love in-person conferences. It's just like the best. So good to see people and like be able to like, talk to them in real life.
Yeah, instead of this two-dimensional screen thing in front of us.
Like, oh, we only have 29 minutes left because I have another call after this. It's like, no, we're here all at the same place. Like, that's it.
Yep.
It's awesome.
Yep.
So
and someday you and I will meet in person.
One day.
In three dimensions.
Someday.
It won't be in New York because I'm not flying across the continent for a one-day event. But
it's fair.
Boise, Idaho, I think will be where we connect at the Crafting Commerce conference in June.
Yes.
So looking forward to that one myself.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Excited. Cool. Any last parting words about the Newsletter Marketing Summit in Austin?
I don't think so. Not any last parting words about the summit itself. I think if you listen this far and you haven't joined the newsletter yet, go join the newsletter, growthinreverse.com. Dylan and I share some interesting stuff on there. So I'm excited to kind of keep doing that and have more people reading. If you want to join a community of people, come check out Growth in Reverse Pro. Me and Dylan hang out virtually in there a lot, daily. And sometimes there are in-person meetups too.
That's right. Because there just was in Austin, and I'm sure there will be more.
Yes, definitely in Boise.
Many yeah, and the many conferences Chenell goes to.
Yeah, too many.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks for sharing all your experience and your thoughts. And I think the other thing we should probably mention is your talk, even if it's not necessarily, let's say you're not able to share it publicly. It would be interesting from my perspective, just to even hear you like maybe give that talk on the podcast or something like that. Your own.
Oh, definitely. I would do that.
That'd be cool to do just as maybe a last point, a note to make.
Yeah. So keep an eye out or an ear out for that
or
coming
both.
soon, or both.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to the podcast, there is a YouTube version of this. Me and Dylan are staring at each other right now. So you can watch us. I don't know, on the big screen. I saw one of my friends the other day sent me a picture. She's like, I'm doing work and watching you on the TV. And I was like, this is so crazy.
That is crazy. I don't think my real life friends even know
Oh, I should say
I am
business
here.
friend. Business friend.
Oh,
Not
okay. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Real life friends are like, "What are
Nice.
you doing? Talking about
Yeah.
emails? That's fun."
Yeah. Exactly.
Uh,
They don't understand.
they don't get it. They don't get it.
No.
Well, if you have
Cool.
ideas for future episodes, please reach out and let us know. We are happy to talk through any other topics. And I guess we should actually talk about upcoming roasts that we want to do.
We should.
So if you go to growthandreverse.com/roast, either roast or roasts, I'll make both. You can submit your newsletter for us to kind of talk through, give feedback. It'll probably be mostly about landing page content topics and ideas, but yeah, I'm excited about this. I've seen other people do roasts on podcasts, and I think it's just fun and very informative, even if it's not your newsletter getting talked about and roasted.
It's kind of like a mini newsletter audit, right?
Yeah.
Like a mini version of that, which Chenell does newsletter audits that you can pay her to do for your newsletter, where she goes really in deep, thorough, as you know she does with her research. So consider this as like a free roast. You get the vibe. Chenell and my vibe is not harsh, so don't be scared. Like we're not gonna tear you apart and be mean or anything like that. We're just gonna probably be more helpful than anything.
I'm excited. Again, if you want to get your newsletter roasted, go to growthandreverse.com/roast and fill out that form. And you might see your name in lights here soon, which is fun.
And if you want an even better chance of getting roasted, just give a Apple rating and review, and maybe we'll pick your newsletter that way too.
There you go. Yeah, we don't have many of those. You're such a good
use a few more.
podcaster, Dylan. I always forget about that.
They apparently help. That's what I've heard.
Who knew? Yeah, I've actually, because I tried to get someone on as a guest recently, and they were like, "Well, what's the download numbers look like? Because you don't have a lot of reviews. So please go review this if you want more fun guests to come on."
Exactly. Bigger, better guests, more reviews needed.
We're getting weird.
Let's wrap it.
Let's wrap it.
All right.
See you later.
See ya.